I used to think love was supposed to feel intense, almost overwhelming. So when it didn't hurt a little, I assumed something was missing. I didn't realize I had it backwards. I remember exactly where I was when that thought first started forming, though I didn't recognize it at the time. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special. I was sitting in my car outside a grocery store, staring at my phone, rereading a message that didn't feel right, but also didn't feel wrong enough to question. Sorry, got busy. We'll talk later. And that was it. No explanation, no warmth, just neutral. And somehow I told myself that was normal. At that point in my life, I thought I understood relationships pretty well. I had been in a few. Some lasted months, one almost 2 years. And if there was one thing I believed with quiet confidence, it was this. Love was about passion, about missing someone constantly, about the highs and lows that made everything feel meaningful. I thought love meant caring so much that it affected your mood, that it was supposed to be unpredictable, a little messy. And if I'm being honest, I think I confused emotional intensity with depth. Back then, I was dating someone named Rachel. She wasn't a bad person, not at all. She was smart, independent, and had this calm way of speaking that made everything sound final. Like her words didn't need defending. But something always felt slightly off, like I was trying to keep up with a rhythm I couldn't quite hear. Some days she'd be incredibly affectionate, texting constantly, making plans, laughing easily. And then other days she'd go quiet. Not cold exactly, just distant enough to make me wonder if I had done something wrong. And that wondering became a routine. I remember thinking, this is what it means to care. I believed that the uncertainty, the emotional shifts, the overthinking were signs that the relationship mattered. Because if it didn't matter, why would I feel this much? Looking back, I see it differently now. But at the time, it felt normal. The discomfort didn't arrive all at once. It showed up in small, forgettable moments. Like the time I told her about a rough day at work. I had been dealing with a difficult client and it left me drained. I didn't expect a big reaction, just acknowledgement. She listened, nodded, then changed the subject. Not abruptly, just smoothly enough that it felt intentional. I remember pausing for a second, thinking, did I expect too much? So I brushed it off. Another time, I canceled plans with friends because she suddenly wanted to meet. I thought she'd appreciate it, that it showed commitment. She barely reacted. Okay, she said, as if it didn't matter either way. And that stuck with me longer than it should have, because I had made a decision and it felt invisible. But again, I told myself, that's just how relationships are. You don't keep score. Still, something was building under the surface. Not frustration exactly, more like a quiet confusion. I just couldn't explain it yet. The moment that shifted everything didn't feel important at first. It happened weeks later, on a Saturday morning. I was at a small coffee shop I used to visit sometimes. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where people mostly kept to themselves. I was waiting for my order when I noticed an older man at the counter. He was struggling a bit with his wallet, trying to count out exact change. The line behind him started to grow, and I could feel that subtle impatience people don't say out loud, but still express through sighs, shifting weight, quick glances. Then the woman behind the counter did something small. She smiled and said, "Don't worry about it, I've got it." Simple, calm, no attention drawn to it. The man hesitated, then nodded, clearly relieved. "Thank you," he said, almost quietly. And she just replied, "Of course." That was it. No big reaction, no one clapped. The line moved on. But I remember standing there thinking, why did that feel different?
It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional in the way I was used to, but it felt steady, real. A few minutes later, I was sitting at a table, still thinking about it. And that's when something uncomfortable started to surface. I tried to remember the last time I had experienced that kind of quiet consideration in my own relationship. Not passion, not excitement, just simple kindness. And I couldn't. At first, I resisted that thought. It felt unfair, like I was comparing unrelated things. But once the idea showed up, it didn't leave. I started replaying moments, the unanswered messages, the times I adjusted my plans, the subtle feeling of needing to earn attention instead of receiving it naturally. And for the first time, I asked myself something I hadn't before. Why does this feel normal to me? That question stayed with me longer than I expected. It followed me through the rest of the weekend, into the next week, into small interactions that suddenly felt different under closer attention. I noticed how often I was trying to interpret things instead of simply experiencing them. How I measured responses, how I adjusted myself to avoid disconnection. And slowly, I realized something that made me uncomfortable. I had been treating love like a problem to solve, like something that required constant effort to maintain. But what I had seen in that coffee shop, that wasn't effort in the same way I felt. It was natural, unforced. Kindness didn't seem to require analysis. The turning point came a few days later. Rachel and I were sitting together, having dinner. It was one of those quiet evenings where nothing was wrong, but nothing felt particularly right either. I remember looking at her and thinking, if I keep going like this, what am I actually building? Not a dramatic thought, just a clear one. And for the first time, I didn't ignore it. I asked her something simple. Do you feel like we're good to each other? She paused. Not confused, just thoughtful. I think we're fine, she said. Fine. That word landed heavier than I expected, because in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want fine. And more importantly, I didn't think kindness should feel optional. That conversation didn't turn into an argument. There was no dramatic ending. We talked, calmly, honestly. And what became clear was this. We were both operating from different ideas of what a relationship should feel like. Neither of us was wrong, but we weren't aligned. And for the first time, I made a decision that didn't come from fear of losing something. I chose to step away. Not because it was terrible, but because it wasn't kind. The weeks after that were quieter than I expected. No dramatic sadness, no overwhelming relief, just space. And in that space, I started noticing things I had overlooked before. The way a friend checked in without needing a reason. The way a coworker remembered something small I had mentioned weeks ago. The way people showed up, consistently, without making it feel like something I had to earn. And slowly, my definition of love began to shift. Not all at once, but enough to change how I saw things. I used to think love was about intensity, about how strongly you felt something. Now I think it's more about how gently it exists. Kindness doesn't demand attention. It doesn't create confusion. It doesn't make you question where you stand. It just shows up, quietly, consistently. And I think that's what I missed before. I was looking for something that felt powerful. I didn't realize that what I actually needed was something that felt safe. Looking back, I don't regret those earlier relationships. They taught me something important, just not what I thought they were teaching me at the time. Because sometimes the biggest shift in perspective doesn't come from a dramatic moment. It comes from something small that you almost overlook. Like a stranger choosing to be kind when they didn't have to be. And suddenly, you start asking different questions about your decisions, your assumptions, your understanding of what matters. I still think about that coffee shop sometimes, not because of what happened, but because of what it made me realize. That maybe love isn't something you feel in extremes. Maybe it's something you recognize in the absence of confusion, in the presence of quiet care, in the way someone treats you when there's nothing to gain. And I guess the question I keep coming back to now is this: if love doesn't feel kind, what exactly are we calling love?